All right, so this is our first lesson. And in today's lesson, we're going to mainly discuss the answer short question. So we'll set the tempo of by starting the course by the easier tasks. So we will talk about how to introduce yourself, which is the first series of tasks that you have to do in your PTE test. And then we will move on and talk about answer short questions. Okay, so I'll share the agenda with you, the agenda for today. And the agenda, first, we're going to be talking about introducing ourselves, talk about the answer short question. We'll talk about the intro. Then we'll talk about the scoring of answer short question. We'll talk about strategies. We'll talk about question cues, which is the most important thing, and I'll discuss that later in more detail. And then we'll talk about chunking words into groups, and this is one of the skills that you will need for your test, and it's super important. So, and then we'll do practice. So let's move on to our first task, obviously introducing yourselves. So introducing yourself is a warm-up activity where once you are into the test, you should get comfortable with the test, and it's really given you as you should see it as an opportunity of really getting comfortable with the test. And so take this opportunity. This question doesn't contribute to your score, obviously. Second thing that you should know is that you will get 25 seconds to prepare, right? So you can prepare your response, how you want to introduce yourself, and you will have 30 seconds to respond. So you'll have 30 seconds to speak about yourself and introduce yourself. What are the things that you can talk about? But first you can talk about, my name is, and talk about your name. You can talk about your nationality. You can talk about when you arrived in Australia, for example. These are some of the ideas that I just came up with. You can talk about what are you currently studying or where are you working, for example, and you can talk about your favorite pastimes as well. What do you like to do as your hobby? And what are your future plans? So you can talk about your future plans and what do you want to do in future? What career you want to pursue and stuff like that. I only have 30 seconds, but in 25 seconds, these are the things that you can write down and you can just introduce yourself. All right. Hopefully your introduction goes really well. So that's important for you to know that, introducing yourself really helps you to get the nerves down and you can, get settled in your test. So next, the activity that we are going to talk about today in today's lesson is obviously the answer short question. Answer short question. Let me introduce answer short question to you. So answer your ability to provide brief and accurate response to a short question. So what it's looking for is that can you respond to a short question and you can give a brief answer to it, right? There are a couple of things that you should be really concerned about is that, if you pause more than 3 seconds when the recording starts and you pause more than 3 seconds, the recording actually shuts and doesn't allow you to record any further. So one of the things that you should avoid is also not giving long answers. So if you give a very long answer to a short question, so it's really looking for a short answer, right? So one word or one phrase. So if you're responding in a very long answer, you're actually wasting a lot of time and you might get the same result. So you should avoid, giving long answers. Moving on to the scoring, obviously the scoring. First one is your listening. Obviously, in communicative skills, you will get a score for your listening and your speaking, and for enabling skills, it will be your vocabulary that is going to be scored. So next up, we are going to talk about strategies. So obviously, strategies are going to help you, and these are practical strategies, are going to help you to score your desired score, your good score that you're looking for. So you must listen the question very, very carefully. All right, talking about speaking, when the question, when the status cue changes to the recording. So you will see that status bar, for example, you will see when it starts recording. So you want to keep an eye on that recording, status cue, current status bar, where it should say recording, and then you start responding. Speak very clearly and naturally. Don't be hesitant or paused as well. All right, talking about responding with a single word or short answer. Again, I can't emphasize that more. Responding with a short answer with a single word or a short phrase is super important. Because okay, moving on to the next one. So here we will really understand, what our how do we listen and respond to the question cues. So question cues are the ones, the words that help us to look for the desired information. So question cues could be things like what, who, when, where. All right, and you guessed it. I mean, what. When we look at a question that starts with what are we looking for? We're looking for a thing, right? So we're looking for a thing that does something. Who? What are we looking for? We're looking for a person, right? So we're looking for a person in the answer. So there has to be a person. If it says who does what, it's actually looking for a person. Talking about when in terms of when, obviously you should know it's looking for a time frame, right? So a time frame is where you should focus on. You should think about, what time is it talking about? Talking about where is obviously looking for a place, for example, right? So you have to predict the type of information that is required based on the question cue, based on the question words. So key question words is super, super important that you pay attention as to what exactly the question is asking you. For example, in here, it could be asking you for an amount, for example, what could be asking for that, who could be a person's name, where obviously talks about, a place, and content words will also help you in questions which guide your answer. Content words, for example, look at this example, right? Who would you consult to treat a fear of crowded places, a philosopher or psychologist? So here the question word is who, right? And what sort of information is required in the answer? Reference to a person or occupation. So here it gives you two options, right? And we will go through some of the questions and what type of questions you can get in answer short question. But one of the questions is where it's going to give you options, so either two options or three options, and you can choose from those options, but it has to be, who you're looking for. Who tells you it's either going to be a name of a person, right, or a name of a profession. Okay, so in this case, obviously you have two options, philosopher or psychologist, but the key content words here are treat a fear of crowded places. So who treats a fear of crowded places? You have to guess it, right? So it either has to be philosopher or psychologist. Now, so you really have to think about what kind of information is required in your question. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to do a little bit of exercise, and I'll give you an example first of what kind of things you're looking for, and then you'll do the exercise on your own. You can pause the video, and then you can try to do this exercise on your own, and after you have completed the exercise, you can resume the video and you will start, looking at how I will solve this, or what is the methodology of solving this. So for example, here we've got question word. So question itself, question word, we've got information needed in the answer, we've got key content words, and we can predict the answer. So for example, here it's pretty straightforward, as we have just discussed. Who would you consult to fear of crowded places, a philosopher or a psychologist? So you've got a question word, who. You've got information needed in this answer is reference to a person or a profession. You've got keywords, consult, treat, a fear of crowded places, a philosopher or a psychologist, right? Gives you two options. The information that is needed is either a profession or a person, right? And who is the question word. Who, whenever you look at who, you're looking for a name of person or a name of profession, right? So here you've got two options, philosopher or psychologist. The correct answer or predicted answer could be a psychologist, right? So we're going to pause here. I'm going to read this question for you, but you pause here and I will give you more questions. And what I want you to do is basically do this exercise, fill in these columns and write what the question words are, what is the information that is needed, and what are the content words, and what could be a predicted answer. All right, so let's do this one. So this one question asks you, how would most people travel to work each day in big cities like Hong Kong, Tokyo, and New York, right? So here you can see the question word. You might guessed it. So I'll give you time to do this on your own, but I'm going to stop here, but I'll share you more questions first. You do it on your own, and then we will come back and then we'll do it together. Okay. So in the next screen, you will see we've got more questions. We've got a question: would a supermarket, a cafe, or a bookstore probably have the widest range of products available? Obviously, it gives you three options: supermarket, a cafe, or bookstore. Despite all advances in equality between the sexes, would more men or women play professional football? So it gives you two options as well. Here you've got more men or more women, right? In which room of their home would someone usually wash their clothes? So obviously now you have to create your own options here. It doesn't give you the options, but it gives you what are the question verbs. So we'll discuss that in. So pause the video here. Do fill this table and these columns, and we will discuss the answers after you've done that. So I'll give you 5 minutes to do this exercise on your own, and then we'll do it together. Okay, see you soon. All right, so we are back, and here, obviously, you can see the next question is how would most people travel to work each day in big cities like Hong Kong, Tokyo, and New York? So the question word here is how, right? Information needed, and the answer is a form of transportation or form of transport. Obviously, this is a thing. So I mean, how it's a way. You're looking for a way of doing something, right? Content words obviously travel to work, big cities like Hong Kong, Tokyo, New York, could be Sydney, right? And the predicted answer could be public transport, metro, and bus, right? So this is from your intuition. You need to know what your answer would be. What is a possible answer? Okay, and public transport, and this is a mode of transportation, isn't it? All right, talking about the next question. So you might have guessed it. The question word here is would. The information needed is answer. So I will read the question for you. Would a supermarket, a cafe, or a bookstore probably have the widest range of products available? Question word here is would. Information needed, and the answer is a kind of shop, right? Kind of a shop is obviously supermarket, and you've got three options here, and the keyword words are obviously a supermarket, a cafe, or a bookstore. Widest range of products available. Predicted answer could be a supermarket, right? So supermarket, when you go to supermarket, most amount of products you find would be in supermarket. The biggest range of products will be available would be in a supermarket. Okay, despite all advances in equality between the sexes, would more men or women play professional football? So obviously it's giving you two options, and obviously the question word here is would more, right? So would more, and then the information needed is basically a proportion of genders, right? Either men or women. And then the keywords are more men or women play professional football. So it gives you professional football, and you will think about, who plays professional football more. Obviously, it's more men that play more professional football because there are leagues and all these different types of games that they play, and you can come up with the answer. It's either going to be more men or more women. The correct answer here is more men. All right, let's look at the other question. In which room of their homes would someone usually wash their clothes? In which or would, in which and would are both question words. So here, in which, obviously you're looking for a room. So what are you looking for? A location, right? In which, right? And it gives you the key content words like room of their home, usually wash their clothes. These are some of the content words that help you decide, what kind of room it could be. So it can't be a bedroom, for example. If you think about it, where do you wash normally? So you'll just think about, where I wash normally my laundry in Australia. Normally people can have a washing machine in a bathroom, or for example, a laundry area. So here it's a laundry or a bathroom. They both are correct answers, and it could be more than one correct answers, but you just have to use your logic here. And these are the question words. If I have to say one thing here is that question word is the most important thing that helps you decide. So you have to pay particularly intense amount of attention to question word. So what kind of question word? What kind of information? It sets the tone of what kind of information you're looking for. And the other thing is obviously the keywords. Obviously, these keywords will allow you to keywords could include a list of questions, a list of options rather, and those options will allow you. If there are no options, then you'll have to create your options, and you can think of what are the options, and there could be more than one correct answer as well. All right, now next activity, we are obviously going to learn about how we chunk words into groups. Okay, chunking words into groups is a very important skill in spoken English, in English, in any sentence of English. Chunking words is super important because it allows us to understand what the speaker is talking about, or even when we speak in by chunking words, and then we explain someone or meaning, right? So if I read this paragraph to you in a way that I just do now, you'll see something odd. So for example, if I read and say, in spoken English, individual words are usually combined into small words, and failing to do this and pausing between each word can create confusion. Obviously, it sounds very robotic and very weird, and I can't really give you any meaning. I don't think if you understood anything that I was saying. I was just saying each word at a time without without grouping them or chunking them together. So it's very important that you chunk the words together to get your meaning across. Okay. So, for example, there's a question here: who would you consult to treat a fear of crowded places, a philosopher or a psychologist? If I said this way, who would you consult to treat a fear of crowded places, a philosopher or a psychologist? It's not really easy for me to understand. By listening this, it's not easy for me to understand the meaning of the sentence, right? So we need to know where the speaker is going to chunk, and this skill is not only important for you in answer short questions, but it's also going to be important for you when you will be doing your describe image, when you'll be doing your repeat sentence. It's really going to help you express your meaning when you speak. All right. So we're going to see where exactly, and how the words are chunked. For example, you can see the first sentence here is, who would you consult? That is one. Who would you consult? That's one. Without any pause, I'm going to say, who would you consult? Then I'm saying, to treat a fear of crowded places, a philosopher or a psychologist. Okay. So here, obviously, you can see, and there are one possible way. Let me make this point as well, that there are one possible way of, there more than one, sorry, there is more than one possible way of chunking words, and it will depend on how you want to frame your meaning, right? So if you want to frame a different meaning, then you can emphasize on different words and you can chunk in different ways. But here, this is one way of chunking words. So obviously, what are the things that we chunk together? So words and question phrases are often chunked together. For question phrases, for example, who would you consult? Who would you consult is one phrase, and we will chunk it together, right? Which of these, right? Phrasal verbs like deals with, right? For example, we'll look at this question. Which major branch of science deals with the classification of living things? Which major branch of science? I will chunk that as one. Which major branch of science? That's one. Deals with is a phrasal verb, right? They are generally chunked together, but it's a verb in a phrase. Deals with, right? It's a collocation as well, and we'll talk about collocations later on in this in this course. But deals with is one way of chunking. It's a phrasal verb that is something that you'll chunk together. So for example, which major branch of science, and then deals with. and then the classification of living things. So noun phrases are often chunked together. Classification of things is one noun phrase. So this is classification of living things. Living things is the noun, and classification of living things, that classification of living things is a noun phrase. So you will chunk that together. So these are some of the ways that you will chunk things together. You can know the rules, but it will come up naturally. It will come naturally. It doesn't have to be, you don't need to learn all these rules, but you should be aware of these rules that we need to chunk together. The most important point is that we need to know where the speaker is chunking things together so that we can have a flow in our mind and when we are listening to this, and we can catch the meaning. Otherwise, you will not be able to catch the meaning, and you will not be able to express your meaning across if you don't chunk the words. It's super important that you understand that. Obviously, if there are lists as well, for example, in the first one, it was a list of philosopher or psychologist. If there is a list, obviously you will pause after each option. For example, I will give you this option. List or options are usually chunked separately. So they're not going to be chunked together. They're not going to be computer, bed, or television. I can't really say that, or I can't say philosopher or psychologist. I will say philosopher or a psychologist. So I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break the options down. So obviously when you're expressing your options, and when you're listening to options, the speaker is going to break the options down, right? And that's how you would know, okay, there are 3 options that I'm looking for, and one of them is correct. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of practice, and I'll give you 5 minutes to do it on your own. But please try to practice and break this sentence down in, so going back to the word phrases, right? So words and question phrases, and then break the phrasal verbs together, and break the noun phrases together. And if there is a list of options, break them together as break them separately as well, right? So these are some of the questions. I'll read out the questions, and you will try to break them down. Actually, I'm not going to read the questions, because if I read the question, then you might get some hints in how to chunk them together. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to pause it here. Okay. I want you to do this exercise on your own and come back, and then we'll discuss it. So we're back, and we'll quickly look at the answers, and we will see, how the things were chunked together. So first of all, we've got which major branch of science? Obviously, the first one, we have already talked about this one, so you should know this one, right? Then, I mean, which major branch of science? Obviously, this is a question word phrase, right? And then deals with is a phrasal verb, deals with the classification of living things, and noun phrase. Okay. Then we've got possible answer is biology. And now we'll see the next one. In most university courses, that's one chunk. There are 2 ways of being assessed. 2 ways of being assessed. This is a phrasal verb. One is orally. That is one option, right? One is orally, which is a noun phrase. One is orally, the other is through, right? And if it talks about orally, then you can think about what are the other ways of assessments. Obviously, it could be written assessments. So you could say written assignments or written assessments. Those are both correct answers. Okay, talking about name a month, right? It's a question, name a month that falls is phrasal verb, between September and November. And you can break September and November, because these are 2 options. So you can break them down as well if you said that. Possible answer, obviously, that's an easy one, October. And if you were paying attention, super important. I mean, in the start, we did say that, paying attention to the question is super important. So you pay attention, you will get, you'll get it. Okay, September, November, you got in the middle, October. That's the correct answer. Okay, we'll see the next one, how we chunk that in a group. Would a town, a village, or a city probably cover the largest area, right? So would a town, so we've got options, town, village, a city. We're breaking them down because these are options, as we discussed, and probably cover the largest area. So this is a phrasal verb, probably cover the largest area. A city. obviously. So a city could be the biggest area. It could be correct as well as a village. I mean, it could be a village that covers the largest areas. It's talking about not the population, it's talking about largest area. So it could be a village as well. So depends on the answer. And there are more than one possible answer, so you should know that always. Okay, number five, which of these question phrase would probably be found another question phrase, but we'll break it down. In most homes around the world, a computer, a bed, or a television. Obviously, not everyone has a television, not everyone has a computer. You could say the bed is the one that everyone is most likely to have. So that is an answer, but the key here is obviously learning how to chunk the phrases together. So this is one possible way of chunking together. In the start, we did say that there are more than one ways of chunking the words together. So if you don't get it right exactly, it's completely fine. But you should be able to make sense of what you're saying when you're speaking in a way of chunking the words in a meaningful word groups. Okay. Cool, sounds good. So now we've got practice. All right. So all the skills. So I'll recap the skills in the start. We talked about, the most important skill is the question cues. What are the question cues? Who, when, so question words, who, when, how, where. All of these questions are going to tell you what type of information you're looking for. Content words are going to help you to understand the context of the question, right? And then it will help you, what kind of information you're looking for, and then it will help you with for the prediction of a correct possible answer. And then listening for the chunking of words. So obviously, and this skill we will really master in repeat sentence, but chunking the words when the speaker is going to be saying, he's going to be chunking the words. So now it is easier for us to understand rather than having emphasis on each word, because if you say it that way, it will not be easy for you to understand. You can try to say it on your own and see if it makes sense. If it's not going to make sense, if you're doing a pair work with another student, you will find that it will not make that much of a sense. So I've got some of the questions here. I'm going to read these things out for you, and I want you to do it on your own. I'll give you some time. We can do it on, you don't have to pause the video. So I'll give you some time straight away. Like, it's a time practice. So you have to do it straight away. Do not take more than 3 seconds to respond. Otherwise, obviously, the recording is going to stop at you and you will not be able to record your response. So let's do this practice and we'll do a lot of practice here, actually. The best way of getting this right and getting perfect results in answer short questions to practice at least 100 before your exam. At least 100 answer short questions on YouTube or online. There's so many answer short questions, time practice. You will find more than 100, I'm sure. Go on YouTube, go on internet and find all the answer short questions. I might do at least 20 with you right now, but that's the key. Do it all and they repeat in PT. You will see that you will have some of the answer short questions will repeat. If you're taking PT more than once, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So let's just do these ones here. So the first one we've got here is, would it be better to go jogging at noon or in the early morning if you wanted to avoid the hottest part of the day? Number two, in which century did the automobile become manufactured on a mass scale? Name a country located in North America. Some calendars begin in the week on Sunday. What is the other day which commonly starts the week? Where would you go to see exhibits of dinosaurs? Which country is in the southern hemisphere, Australia or Canada? In which season would people be least likely to go snow skiing? Which of these was last to be explored? The Himalayas, the moon, or Australia? Would a letter or email be the fastest way to get a message to your professor? Jane and Peter have 3 children. They are 4, 13, and 15 years old. They only have one son, who is their youngest child. How old is their middle child? Which would be better to report the population of a major global city? Hundreds, millions, or billions? This work is due for submission 1 month from 15th June. On what date should it be submitted? Right? Okay, so I was chunking the words, and you might have seen I've paused where I saw the chunking to be most suitable for me to get you the meaning across. Okay, so and you can see, most of the times you have one word answer or a very short phrase answer. So I hope you might have done it right. We are going to review the answers now. All right, so let's look at the answers. So the first one, would it be better to go jogging at noon or in the early morning if you wanted to avoid the hottest part of the day? Sample answers are in the early morning. So in the early mornings, it comes from the question itself. So you can see in the early morning, it's giving you 2 options, right? At noon or early morning, there has to be only 2 options to get the early morning, because obviously, at noon the sun is above your head and it could be really hot. So you use some common sense and logic, and that will help you. All right, in which city? So again, in which century? Sorry, in which century? It's thinking about. Which century? Obviously, gives you the option, and centuries. And you can think of the centuries: 20th century, 19th century, 18th century. Automobile became manufactured on a mass scale. Obviously, now we have most amount of cars. Has to be the 20th century, right? When it all started on a mass scale, right? It was the previous century. This is 21st century. You had the 20th century when it started process. Okay. Name a country located in North America. Obviously, you might have thought about Canada, USA, Mexico. They're all correct, right? You got Mexico here is one of the countries in North America. Name a country. The name a country, obviously. Which country? Some calendars begin the week on Sunday. What is the other day which commonly starts the week? Obviously, Monday, some of the calendars you might have seen starting from Sunday. Some of the calendars might start. Most commonly used calendar it starts from Monday, right? So that should have been easy one for you. But you understand, what are you looking for? What kind of information looking for? Where would you go to see exhibits of dinosaurs? So where? Obviously talking about a place. Where do you go exhibits? Obviously it's a museum. You'll say museum. Which country? It's talking about a country. Is in the southern hemisphere. It gives you 2 options: Australia or Canada. So Canada is in the northern hemisphere. Australia is in the southern hemisphere. So you have to come over there. Australia. Okay, talking about the other one. In which season would people be least likely to go snow skiing, right? So snow skiing, obviously people like to go in winter, right? So least likely is the keyword that you need to look for, and least likely has to be in summer. Right? Which of these was last to be explored? The Himalayas, the moon, or Australia? So last to be explored. Obviously, the Earth has been explored, and we know, Himalayas and Australia exist, and obviously, the moon was later explored. Would a letter or email, so again, 2 options, would a letter or email be the fastest way to get a message to your professor? Email has to be, because it doesn't, it's instant, isn't it? If you text someone or email someone, that is instant. The letter takes time, could take days depending on where your professor lives. So Jane and Peter have 3 children. They are 4, 13, and 15. We talked about 3 options and 3 children. How old is the middle child? Middle child is 13 years old. That's the question. So easy one to recognize. They only have one son who is their youngest child. This is just a distractor. So it kind of gives you a little bit more information to distract you. And you don't have to pay attention at all. You just have to think about how old is their middle child. That's the key question here. You don't have to worry about the son and his age and being a youngest child. It has nothing to do with the question asked here. So that's a distractor, and you have to be aware of the distractor. Okay, which would be better to report the population of a major global city? Hundreds, millions, or billions? Obviously millions, because it's talking about a city. It's not talking about a country. Some of the countries' population can be reported in billions, for example, China and India. But this is talking about major global city. It has to be millions. This work is due for submission 1 month from 15th of June. It needs a little bit of calculation on what date should it be submitted. So work is due for submission 1 month from 15th of June. So if 1 month from 15th of June, has to be July 15th or 15th of July. Okay, could be the correct answer. So you definitely have to think on the spot. And what will help you to think on the spot is definitely the question word, super important. Again, I'll emphasize that the most important takeaway that you can get from this lesson is your question word, your question cue, your question word. What are you looking for? That is something that you need to focus, and that helps you to think about, then take the context words and understand the context and answer on the spot. And this is the skill that is needed for this item type. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen and practice a few more questions. I think not few, quite a lot, but we're going to listen to the question and you will answer. And then we'll review the answer, okay?
What organ do cardiologists specialize in?
Okay, so the question was, what organ do cardiologists specialize in? You've got heart or hearts. That's the correct answer. Incorrect ones will be body. And obviously, cardiologists, you should know, they specialize in heart. If someone has a heart attack, he will go to cardiologist. Okay, so obviously, this is an academic PD academic test, and there's going to be questions of the academic theme. It will ask you academic questions, not going to ask you general English questions. So this is obviously a technical question. Maybe some people might not know this, but there will be some science questions. There could be some technical accounting questions, business questions, and that's the reason why academic is so different from the general English test, because you will be tested on the academic areas. All right, moving on to the next one.
If telescopes are used to locate distant objects, what instrument is employed to magnify minuscule objects?
Right, I hope you got that. So we'll see the transcription and the answer. Right, so if telescopes are used to locate distant objects, what instrument is employed to magnify minuscule objects? Minuscule is the tiny object. So obviously you need to understand, if it's a tiny object and you're trying to magnify it, what do you use to magnify it? Obviously a microscope. You look into a microscope and you see, if there is an object or not. So telescope will be wrong, because the telescope is the distant objects, and binoculars is also a distant object is what you see. So that would be wrong as well. So moving on to the next one.
Which kind of punishment for a crime is the less severe, an imprisonment or community service?
So we'll see the answer here. The question, which kind of punishment for a crime is less severe, an imprisonment or community service? Right, so it gives you two options here again, imprisonment or community service. Which one is less severe? Less severe, not more severe. So less severe is the key here, is the community service, isn't it?
How many sides are there in a bilateral agreement?
You might have got the answer. Let's check. How many sides are there in bilateral agreement? Bilateral means two, right? Isn't it? Bi means two. So bilateral agreement, you should get the answer two. Any other numbers will be incorrect.
Which is the longest, a decade, a millennium, or a century?
So which is the longest, a decade, millennium, or a century? What is a decade? 10 years. Millennium, 1,000 years. Century, 100 years. Which is the longest? So you know all of these words and what they mean. Obviously, millennium is the longest.
A manufacturing process releases noxious gases. What is the most important safety measure for workers at this plant? Ensuring good ventilation or appropriate footwear?
Right. So again, it gives you two options, right? So a manufacturing process releases noxious gases. What is the most important thing? What is the most important safety measure? That is the key here. What is the most important safety measure? Even though the question is so long, it gives you two options for the most important safety measure. Now, most important safety measure is important, right? For you to understand. For workers at this plant, it's the noxious gases. So context is super important here. So noxious gases is being released. If there is no ventilation, people are going to be breathing in those noxious gases and they're going to get really sick. So is it appropriate footwear that is going to help them in this situation? I mean, appropriate footwear is very important in a manufacturing process facility, but if it's noxious gases, out of these two, what is the most important? Good ventilation or appropriate footwear? If they don't get good ventilation, they're gonna get sick. If their appropriate footwear is not there, they probably survive, but that's also important, but this one is more important. Okay, so that's how you will rationalize this and you will come up with this ventilation. So here, this is one of the questions where context becomes very important. So I said the most important thing is that, what is the most important? So you look for the question word, but if you don't understand the context, you might not get the correct answer. So also super important is to understanding the context. Okay, moving on.
A list of events placed in time order is usually described as what?
Okay, the question is, a list of events placed in time order is usually described as what? So a list of events placed in this order as what? So it gives you a context. Here, the important thing is context and also the word described as what? Described as what? Okay, so it doesn't give you any options. So you really have to think about a list of events placed in time order. If it's placed in time order, what is it? You can come up with, we can think of two things, a chronology or a timeline. So schedule will be wrong because it's not a list of events, right? Order, time, story, book, news, all of these will be wrong. The correct answers will be chronology and the timeline. So this one is, I believe this one is very tricky with it because it doesn't give you the options, but it has to, you really have to think about, and you really have to think about your knowledge of these things. And like I said, it's academic. So PT academic is going to have questions from academic areas for you. It's going to be very different to general English. Okay, let's look at the next one.
If a figure is hexagonal, how many sides does it have?
So hexagonal, so you should know hexagonal, right? So if you're not aware of hexagonal, that's where you're going to have a problem because you wouldn't know the answer here. Because if a figure is hexagonal, how many sides does it have? It has 6 sides. Hexagonal is 6. It has 6 sides, that shape. So this is also a very technical question. You can come across technical questions. Like I discussed, this is PT academic and we'll have technical questions to be ready for that. And the key is that at least practice. You're practicing 20 plus questions with me, but at least practice more than 100 before you go into your exam. The more you do it, the better you're gonna get because the questions repeat. Okay. All right, going to the next one.
What key mineral makes seawater different from fresh water?
Right. So sea mineral is the question here. So what key mineral makes seawater different from the freshwater. Freshwater and seawater seawater is salty, isn't it? So the mineral that makes it different to the freshwater, the reason why you can't really drink the seawater is obviously it's salty. It's the salt. It's what is different, right? Last one, I guess.
In the animal kingdom, is the purpose of camouflage to attract a mate, to find food, or to hide?
Right. So this is a good question, and obviously it's also a technical question. Camouflage, you should know the meaning of camouflage. Maybe if you're not familiar with camouflage, it's the clothing that someone wears to be able to hide themselves, right? So if you knew the meaning, and this is obviously, testing your vocabulary here as well. So if you know the meaning of camouflage. Okay, so that's the end of presentation. I'll stop sharing, but I want to make a few points here, really important. And let's just recap here. So for answer short questions, and we discussed about introduction, I think you will be very familiar, we will be okay with your introductions, but answer short questions, always remember, very important is the question cues. So you need to think about your question. What is it asking for? Is it asking for a person or a time or a place or a thing or a method of doing things and things like that? And then you have to think about context, or you have to get the context right as well. So if you understand the context, then you will be able to understand what the question is asking for. So listening is super important. Listening is very, very important for you. And you will improve your listening by doing more than 100. That's what I'm asking for you, from you. You must do at least 100 plus questions. If you do more, that's even better. But do more than 100 questions before your actual PT exam. Okay, and you can find a lot of material online. You can find on Google and you can find on YouTube. We have covered more than 20 questions in this course, in this lesson. So that's hopefully going to help you as well and set the tone for you to practice more on your own. The other thing that I want to talk about is, obviously we talked about chunking words in groups, phrasal verbs and noun phrases and question phrases. These are very important skills because you would be able to absorb them and understand the meaning of the question, and then you will be able to respond to it. Also, this is going to help you in your next lesson. We will learn repeat sentence. It will help you when you do your repeat sentence. When you're repeating, you will be repeating by chunking the words together, and you will remember the words by group of words, not word by word. If you remember word by word, you will not be able to remember. You will not be able to understand the meaning. So catching the meaning helps you to regurgitate the sentence and repeat the sentence. So that's very important skill. And lastly, again, I would say practice is super important. So we practice more than 20 questions. I will urge you to practice more than 100 questions, and practice is the key. It's not a classroom environment where I will make you do a lot of questions in my class, but obviously this is an online course. It does have a limitation of not checking your work, but hopefully you were able to do some practice while you were working through this video. And I wish you all the best for your video studies, and I'll see you in the next class. So till then, take care and goodbye.